the long commercial bit. 500 Startups has been around for about 4 years. We've funded about 700 companies. Most of those are going to die. Most of the businesses that people create don't work. And I'm not talking about whether you actually have a cool product or whether you have customers. It's just that a lot of businesses don't ever get to interesting size scale and don't usually make money. So I don't want to discourage you from working on cool things, and definitely you should explore your passion. But if you really want to create a business, and particularly if you want to get money from investors, I would strongly encourage you to think about not just a cool idea, but solving a customer problem that actually helps them do something that's really important to them, something ideally that they would pay money for. So a big sort of thought process when you get started is around considering whether you're building something that's for growth or whether you're building something for revenue. And I make that distinction. There's a lot of really cool products out there that are big growth products that don't make any money. And some of those are probably the most famous products you've heard of, at least in the early stages. Facebook, Twitter, even Google were products that did not make money. WhatsApp was acquired for $19 billion without making very much money. Instagram and others also were acquired for a lot of money without really having a business model. So maybe saying, well, why am I asking you to think about revenue when there's all these companies out there that are billion-dollar entities that were created that don't really have business models? And the answer is similar to, how many of you are basketball fans? Like Michael Jordan or LeBron? Guess what? You're not Michael Jordan or LeBron. You're not 6'6", you can't dunk, you can't fucking shoot, you can't pass, you can't do anything that will get you into the goddamn NBA. You're just a normal basketball player. And if you're really good, you might make the collegiates, you might be able to play for some money in some shitty league in Italy or somewhere, but you're probably not going to get to the NBA. If you can get to the NBA, ignore what the fuck I'm saying right now. But, don't clap, don't clap, this is a depressing fucking story. Why are you clapping? I just told you you're wasting all your goddamn time. So what I really want you to understand is that you should learn the fundamentals. In basketball, that's rebounding, that's passing, that's shooting free throws. In startups, it's building something that people want. People that want to pay for that thing. In fact, when you see that people will pay you for something, it's a really good sign that that might actually be a business. If you can get them to pay in large numbers or use your product in large numbers, that's also a good sign that it's a business. But just because you have some cool idea that you're working on that people might use, or maybe even a lot of them don't use, but if they use, they might not pay for it, it's not a business. In fact, the key things that you're really trying to understand is, can you produce a functional product that people want to use? Will they pay you for it? Are the unit economics positive at some point in the future? Can you scale that business? I will say this again. Can you scale that business? Right? And you can scale it in a number of ways. You can scale it for usage. You can scale it optimizing for revenue. You can scale it optimizing for profit. Those are three very different optimizations. If you're not scaling it for profit, in other words, if you're scaling it for usage or revenue, you will probably need financing of some sort. If you're able to scale it profitably, you might not need to scale it very much and you could run out of cash flow. But if you want money, you need to think about those things. So, a lot of times I see companies start building products and they really don't have a clear idea about how they're going to make money, and they really don't have a very good idea about how they scale the product. They're focusing on building cool shit. And again, I don't want to dissuade you from your passions, but building cool shit is not a fucking business. Right? It's not a business until someone wants to use your cool shit, and then they want to pay for your cool shit, and then lots of people want to pay for your cool shit, and then lots of people will pay you enough money that you can actually make a profit doing that cool shit. Do you understand that? I guarantee you, all of you shaking your heads right now, you don't understand a fucking thing about what I'm saying. So, very important is not to overbuild feature set. When you're thinking about, a lot of people will start with this cool idea like, hey, this is a really cool video compression algorithm. Hey, this is a really cool way to share photos. Hey, this is a really good way to tell social media stories. But you do have to think about how are you going to get people to use that product, pay you for that product, and hopefully figure out ways to scale customer acquisition. And I don't mean like PR and social media generally for that scalable customer acquisition. You want ways that will be able to, hopefully you can pay for customer usage at some modest scale and then generate more revenue afterwards. A lot of teams will underemphasize things like design and UX that help users understand how to use your product. You will not pay attention to the timing of cost and revenue. So you might build a product or like pay to deliver that product and incur expenses far before you actually see the transaction. You might have a SaaS product where it costs you $20 to acquire the customer and you get $5 in the first month, and then in months 4 through 6 you have a profitable business. Guess what? If you're growing very quickly and you're paying $20 for customers that you only get $20 for 4 to 6 months later, again, you're going to have to finance that growth in some way, either debt or equity or some other way you pre-funded customer products. So when you're building your products, I think you want to be looking at what are the people on the team that can help you in not just building product, but how do you design user experience so that customers understand how to use your product? Looking at someone from an analytical marketing capacity who's able to understand timing of expense and revenue and can figure out different channels for acquiring customers. Hopefully, again, at a profit at some point. And then, here's the thing is like when you're building building products and features, let's just keep it at that level. You don't want to get to a point where like you're continuing to build features. Your goal is to get to the shittiest level of product functionality that customers will actually use or pay for. Right? Now, I say that again, I'm not trying to intentionally get you to build crappy products, but what you want to test for, what's the minimal product offering or feature set offering that people will use or pay for relative to their awareness of alternatives. That's an important point. Relative to their awareness of alternatives. So this man here is doing a parking sharing app. Right. So I don't know if there are other parking sharing apps out there. I don't know if people feel like they need parking spaces. I don't know if they feel like they need a technology tool to do that. But there's a basic need there. If you're in a city that's probably got a lack of parking spaces, you want to figure out where those parking spaces are, and there's already a proven model for people paying for parking. So you've at least satisfied some basic tests for probably there is customer need, probably there is a reason to pay for that. However, you need to understand what are the competitive alternatives. So in parts of the city, there may be lots of availability of parking. In others, there may be not. There may be certain types of people who will pay for parking because they're in a hurry or because they're rich, as opposed to others. You may get a situation where you don't have to pay for that parking space right away. You can pay for it later. You might be able to get the money up front. That's really a lot better than having to pay for that parking space previously and then have to generate revenue later. But the most important thing with all of this, I'm assuming that a lot of you will be able to come up with product ideas that people want to use and might even want to pay for. Scalable path to customer acquisition. Most people think that coding and building the product is the most important thing in your business. I challenge you to say, probably not. Shitty products with good customer acquisition channels work a hell of a lot better than great products with shitty customer acquisition channels. If you build a great product but nobody knows about it, or you don't make money with it, it's not going to be successful. If you build a modestly interesting product that's slightly better than the competitive alternatives on either price or quality or demographic targeting, and you can figure out scalable paths to customer acquisition, you will have a business. And then over the long term, you might be able to make that product better and increase margins or increase your availability, increase your competitive assessment. But what's important is understanding what is the customer aware of. If there are 10 other competitors out there that the customer doesn't know about them, you don't have to worry about it. If you're building a product in an existing market where there's lots of competitors that the customer knows about, you probably have to beat those competitors on price, quality, or availability in some fashion. The interesting thing is, you don't have to beat them on all of those things. You just have to beat them on one area. So substantially better or lower price, substantially better quality, substantially better targeting for that particular product customer demographic. If you can figure out that like competitive differentiation with respect to the alternatives that customer is aware of, and your unit economics are at least close to break even, that's a great place to start focusing on customer acquisition, scaling customer acquisition, and stop building feature set. Make that important point is there's a transition period between when you have found something that people want to use and buy, when you're mostly building products and testing for who's going to do that, and then you found that, and you start to scale the business. You stop generally building features and start focusing on customer acquisition. At that point, you may still be tweaking customer feature set, demographic, other things that will increase your desirability from a customer standpoint, might increase your margins, might increase your profitability. But your primary exercise, at least if you're trying to build a big business, is how do you scale customer acquisition? This is consistently underappreciated by most company founders. Pinterest. A product that many people could have built. Now, this example isn't great because there's not actual monetization happening right away and they finance the hell out of it. But that particular product could have been built by a lot of people. What was different about it was that Ben was able to get a very visual product experience that a lot of people engaged with, and it was very scalable, at least in an organic fashion. Now you may say, hey, monetization is not there yet, but I will say that pictures, very likely affiliate linked to commerce in the future. That company is now valued at $5 billion. Not a particularly technically focused company, actually much more around design and UX. So anyway, for those of you who aspire to be Michael Jordan or LeBron, I wish you luck. For the rest of you who are working on your passing, rebounding, and free throw shooting skills, build something functional that people want to pay for. Try and understand unit economics, and then try and increase scale. Right? That can be done by a lot of different methods. You can probably get more customers, you can improve usability and retention, but try and understand how you get to scalable customer acquisition. When you start seeing scalable customer acquisition, you'll have 3 optimizations to choose from. Usage, customer usage, revenue, or profitability. It depends on what your financing situation is, which of those you might want to optimize for. I'll try and leave it at that. Focus on building great products, but really build shitty products that are slightly better than the alternative, and then try and get to scale. Thanks.